or so. Tuesday morning. Great morning, great week, great new year. We're going to have a great year together, and I'm glad that you're here and learning together. We are in the middle of Abraham's very dysfunctional family, and so Abraham and Sarah have passed away, both buried in the cave of Machpelah. Maybe one day I'll tell you about that one. Isaac has married Rebecca. She couldn't have children, and then later she did. And so we have Jacob and Esau, Jacob being the younger, Esau being the older, and Jacob being the one who's kind of the liar and the cheat, but yet the one who represents the chosen people. And so now what I want to talk with you about now is the connection that God makes between, like Esau and Jacob represent larger groups of people, ways of thinking. One is a child of the law, and one is a child of the promise. And this is now the second time this has happened in Abraham's family, where it is not Ishmael who gets blessed, but Isaac, and it's not Esau who gets blessed, but Jacob. And that is very much a pattern. And we'll see that with Jacob's children. It's not the first 11 children who get blessed and bring the blessing. It's the 12th child, the last child, whose name is Joseph. And so it is a very clear pattern in the Old Testament. And it's fascinating to understand this as you see it from a Jesus perspective, for the fulfillment of the promise. The promise to Abraham is that through his faith, his descendants will become heirs, inherit the land, and be too numerous to count. And then the New Testament writers say that it is the promise through faith that makes us heirs, not the bloodline. And so now it's not the physical land. The promise is spiritual for Christians. We do not fight for the land. And so this land in 1948 was given to Israel, and obviously you know as well as I do, there has been wars over this land since long before 1948, since Abraham's time. And if you think about it, God promises land to Abraham, and there's already people living on the land. So in order for Abraham to have that land, you have to displace the people who are living on it. And that pattern creates, it seems like, a never-ending cycle of revenge and hatred. And that's the way that the nation of Israel exists. They take the land. Fascinating how this is God's plan. And so I'm gonna read something to you about the promise, because Paul talks a lot about this. The New Testament writers talk about it. Jesus talks about it, and how the battle is not for the land. The battle is for the soul, for people of faith. And in fact, even if Israel perfectly inherits the land and perfectly obeys the law, they are still incomplete. They are an unfinished product. And so I'm going to read you this morning from Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11 is a list of all these characters that we've been talking about the last year, these Old Testament characters in Genesis. At the end of that, it goes beyond Genesis, but at the end of that, this is the end of chapter 11, the writer says, after a summation, the world was not worthy of them, Abraham and Isaac and Sarah and Rebecca, and on and on. They wandered in deserts and mountains, living in caves and holes in the ground. They were nomads, uh, looking, even though the land was promised to them, they spent an awful lot of time not in the land. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, which fascinates me, that even though in 1948 the nation of Israel was given the land, it's not the fulfillment of the promise. The land is not the goal. It's not the destination. In fact, he puts it like this: they did not receive what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, for people of faith, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. We who are believers are the fulfillment of the promise. We are the stars in the sky. We are the sand by the seashore. We are the fulfillment of the land. We are the promised people. And we finish what God starts with Israel. Christians finish God's plan. Actually, Christ finishes it. We inherit it. And so what a tremendous honor and privilege that is. I've always thought one of the gravest spiritual mistakes that Christians in the church ever got involved in was the Crusades, a battle for the land. It just seems so antithetical to who we really are and what our purpose is. And, going all the way back to Abraham now, this land is, the physical land is doomed to war. People are displaced. They've always been displaced there. God ordained it. Bizarre, isn't it? But at the same time, not so bizarre, because it's so far away from what we are supposed to be that to anyone who wants to see it, it's obvious. The city that God promises to us is Mount Zion. It's not of this world. It's spiritual. Our land, our home, is not here. And so we finish the promise, which is faith, that which cannot be seen or touched. A city that is something that lures our soul unto our eternity. And as you take this perspective and you impose it over top of Israel, it seems like there is millennia of battling for something that is only, what does the writer call it? A shadow of reality. That the city of Jerusalem is a copy of the real thing. It's not the real thing itself. And so here's Jacob the swindler. He's part of a bigger plan. A plan that is going to be carried out sometime, not in his lifetime, or his children, or his grandchildren, or his great-grandchildren, probably a couple thousand years before Jesus comes. It's crazy, isn't it? And so that allows me to have perspective on why I'm here. And this is really what I wanted to share with you today. We who are Christians, we are spiritual beings, and we live knowing full well this is not our home. This is not where we end up. This is not This is not the promise. Uh, and that perspective puts me kind of in my place so that I know that I'm just a piece in a very large plan. And so I can wake up each day and say, okay, let me do my part for whatever this plan is that God has in mind. And I don't have to understand the whole plan. I just have to do my part, which is to be a man of faith and trust in God no matter what I see. That's my part. I can do that every day. And so that's a great way for us to start the new year. No matter what comes your way this year, trust in God. Do your part and believe that He's got a great plan. You and I were marching homeward. This is not our home. So I look forward to a city in the hills that God has created for someone like me to be an heir and inherit a great eternity. You have a